The Los Angeles Kings broke their 3-game losing streak and seem to be back on track. Eddie Garcia of Locked On Kings is here to talk about that and all things LA Kings next on the Locked On NHL Podcast.
You're Locked On NHL, your daily podcast on the National Hockey League. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome, everybody, to the Monday edition of the Locked On NHL Podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank everyone who makes Locked On NHL your first listen every day. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts so you can get new episodes as soon as they drop. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. It is my pleasure to welcome back to the show the host of Locked On LA Kings, Eddie Garcia. And Eddie, great to have you here, and great for the Kings to end that little mini 3-game losing streak.
Yeah, great to be with you, Gil. I always appreciate it. It was nice to see the Kings get a win, especially in a game against Seattle that they really dominated 5-on-5. Seattle got a late power play opportunity, and give them credit, they took advantage of it to send it into overtime and then eventually a shootout. But the Kings were by far the better team in the end. 9th round of the shootout, they end up getting the victory. But good to get back on the winning track after their season-long 3-game losing skid, and back on the road where they've been so amazing this year.
Yeah, I had to ask you about that. I mean, 11 straight, the first 11 games on the road, if I'm not mistaken.
Mm-hmm.
What is the secret to their success away from home right now?
Yeah, once it gets going, I assume, just confidence plays a factor in it. But, there's been a lot of questions as to why. And I guess the most reasonable explanation is, when you're at home, sometimes there's a tendency to want to put on a show for the fans. Maybe you do things not quite as simply or as basic as you might otherwise. And I guess on the road, it's, keep it simple, just pretty straightforward, not looking to, entertain the fans necessarily. So that's an explanation I've heard, which I guess makes as much sense as anything. But I think there's also just a bit of a factor that, they started off well on the road and struggled a bit at home. Now they did take on some very good teams at home early, and then it just kind of gets into a momentum or confidence kind of thing. But they've been unbelievable on the road and okay at home.
Now, how is it? I mean, this team was doing so well early, and then you hit this 3-game losing streak. How did the team respond emotionally to, starting to have this little slump?
I think they were fine with it. I mean, you never obviously want to lose multiple games, but it's not like they've been playing bad hockey. They've got a couple of injury issues going on right now, and they've been really healthy, which is a huge part of it, as you know, something you obviously can't control. They started the year, Victor Arvidsson is on long-term injured reserve. He's still going to be out for months following back surgery, and he's a very important piece, but they haven't had him all year. And other than him, they've had the same lineup almost the entire season. As a matter of fact, their defenseman, Vladislav Gavrikov, he's on injured reserve right now after a knee-on-knee hit, which happened in a game against your Islanders. But they'd had the same 3 defensive pairs, I think, for every game but one until that recently. So just things like that has been the consistency, knowing who you're playing with almost every night. And for the forward lines, it's been pretty much the same as well. So a lot of health. But I think overall, though, I don't think their confidence was shaken at all. It's just one of those, every team goes through it. Even the top teams in the NHL are going to lose 2-3 games in a row at some point. But it was good to see him kind of snapped out of that with a hard-fought win. And we'll see where they go. That was the first, I believe, 7 consecutive games against Pacific Division opponents. So an important little stretch for them right now as they start to take on some of their in-division rivals.
No doubt. And got to ask you about Cam Talbot. He has been outstanding all season long. He's got to be a big reason for this team's strong start this season.
Without question. I had a lot of confidence that he could come in and get the job done and that he could come in and be a better goaltender than the Kings had a season ago. But I did not think he would be, I mean, frankly, at this point in a Vezina discussion, and it's still very early, but I mean, if you know, all we can go on is what we've seen so far. And he's been one of the best goalies in the league. He's top 3 in save percentage and goals against average. He's been there pretty much all season. So, and he's, you know, obviously getting the wins as well. So factor it all together, he's been one of the best goalies through 25, 26 games of the NHL season for the Kings. So he's been better than expected, but yeah, I think, you know, he's healthy. A couple years ago in Minnesota, he had a real good year. You know, wasn't very good last year in Ottawa. There were some health issues as well in that. And he wasn't playing behind a great team, to be honest, but now he's got a really good, consistent, defensive-minded team in front of him, and he's also stepped up his game. So he's definitely been one of the biggest reasons why the Kings have done so well so far.
Talk to me a little bit about Trevor Moore. I mean, not a household name nationally, but leading the team in goals scored, having a very strong start to the season. What is the secret to his success?
It's a great question, and he just looks more confident. And frankly, he's showing some skills that I wasn't sure he had. So, you know, he came over in a trade with Toronto for Jake Muzzin a few years back. And he looked like he was going to be just a really solid, you know, third line player. But he's taken his game to another level. A couple years ago, he had a career year. Last year, he had some injury issues, but this year, he's kind of come out of nowhere. He's never had a 20-goal season before. Right now, he's projected to be a 40-goal scorer. I don't know if he'll get that or not, but he's not scoring fluky goals. The goals he's scoring are skilled, great goals. Accuracy, the moves around the net. This isn't, you know, a guy who is getting skates off his leg and, you know, that kind of thing. He's earning his goals, and they're highly skilled goals. So I don't know if anyone thought he had this kind of a skill level, but maybe it's taken him a few years to kind of really get into his groove. But he's been unbelievable, and another great goal against Seattle. So am I surprised with how well he's doing? Yes, but when I look at his game and I analyze the goals he's scoring, again, these are not fluke goals. These are highly skilled goals. So we thought he'd be a really good player, but I mean, he's playing like a top line player at this point, which has obviously been great.
Talk to me a little bit about Drew Doughty and Anze Kopitar. These are veterans who have won Stanley Cups in LA, and yet they're still contributing a lot to the success of this team.
No, it's a great point. And, you know, Anze Kopitar is starting to hit a lot of career milestones in franchise history. He got games played this year. He has most assists. He passed Marcel Dion a couple weeks back as far as career assists. So he's, you know, really getting into that. I mean, I think he's going to be the greatest king in franchise history. If he's certainly in the discussion. And when it's all said and done, to me, there's no doubt he is. And he's going to have a lot of the records to back that up. But he's, you know, it's funny, you know, you kind of honor him. They're honoring him like every other night for some milestone. And it's one of those things sometimes you see players get when they've kind of, you know, hung on for a long time and they've been fan favorites and that kind of thing. And maybe they're not quite what they were. That's not him. He's still, he's tied for the team lead in scoring. He scored a goal in the Seattle game as well. He's getting it done on the power play. He's not close to being done, even though he's been around a long time. He's still playing at a very high level. Maybe with Patrice Bergeron out of the league now, he can win another Selke trophy. But he's getting it done on both ends of the ice, centering the top line. And yes, you're right. He and Drew Doughty have been there, done that. They definitely would love to get another chance at another Stanley Cup before they say goodbye. But they're both still contributing. Drew Doughty is still playing a ton of minutes. He's still, you know, amongst the league leaders in time on ice as he usually is. So they're both of them are not showing any slowdown at this point. Doughty quarterbacking the number one power play unit. So you're right. They're the two old holdouts for sure on the team, but still playing at a very high level.
All right, Eddie, why don't you tell our viewers and our listeners where they could find the podcast and where they could find you on social media?
You can just search Locked On LA Kings. Make sure you do the LA Kings, or you might get a basketball team that I've heard about here in California. But no, Locked On LA Kings on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts.
All right, Eddie, always a pleasure. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks, Gil.
Today's episode is brought to you by your friends at FanDuel. As the weather gets colder, the NFL offers stay hot on FanDuel. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action. And the app is so easy to use, and there's a wide range of betting options like spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. And it's not just the NFL. You've got the college bowl season coming up, college basketball, the NBA, and you could even use your knowledge of the NFL on FanDuel. So check out all the latest odds. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off the NFL season. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL.